Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, the goal in the first minute of the podcast. It's not the best way to start. And I'm joined today by the goal in the final minutes of the podcast. It's not the best way to finish, not end, in endish. That's kind of where I went there. Entish, that's a good one.
Yes.
Hello, Martin Riley, it's you. How are you doing?
Yes, it is me. I'm not very entish, but I'm quite hairy. Anyway, I'm okay. I'm doing all right, and it's not been a bad day. Pretty chill, because you swapped the days when I normally have kids, because I had a party that I was going to last night. So today has been largely child-free, just one child who has been sat in her room all day, keeping herself occupied. So it's literally been the quietest day, quietest Sunday in our house for a long, long time. I've had a nice tea. I had made stir fry and some fried rice to go with it, which was lovely. Really nice tea. How about yourself, Adam? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. I've had a really quiet weekend after quite a few busy, noisy ones. So I'm pretty happy to have been in watching a lot of football. I've watched just an incredible amount of football this weekend. Probably need to see a therapist. But yeah, today was nice. I had a Thai curry for tea, which didn't quite turn out as expected, but it was still pretty good. So all good on that front. No pasta for Adam, but it's a Sunday, so it's a bit different, in it. Like there's a bit more time on everyone's hands, so to speak. No news really to talk about, is there? Nothing's really happened. World's not ending. Lots of teams around us are still losing games. Yeah, don't really know what else to say on this part. Although we are only, 1 month and 2 days away from the January transfer window opening, which means hopefully that Leeds make at least one signing, hopefully more if we need them. That would be nice. And if you are interested in transfer content, you can find it on our Patreon, patreon.com/ASAW Patreon, because we have a bonus pod episode on there, which is for Patreon only subscribers. And yeah, it was pretty good. We talked about some kind of players and profiles that we would like to see come in the window. So if that interests you and you'd like to hear our thoughts on some pretty realistic, at least two of the three anyway, options that we might get, go and find that. And yeah, we're on YouTube. If you didn't already know, I think we've made this clear already this season. So go and like and subscribe and all that good stuff over there if you haven't already. It really does help. But we're back to talk about Manchester City today. So we'll start, as always, Martin, with the game summary, which goes as Leeds approached the game with their usual 4-3-3 shape, and Man City opted for a 4-3-3 shape of their own too. The game started really poorly for Leeds when Man City scored in their first attack of the game, with Phil Foden volleying home across from Mateus Nunes, with the shot clipping the underside of the bar before entering the net. The rest of the first half, there was only one side that looked likely to score, with Man City having 14 shots and Leeds only managing 2. 14, Jeremy, that's insane. Man City extended their lead a set-piece situation, with Josko Gvardiol scoring from very close range after a Nico O'Reilly header was saved, but parried to the feet of Gvardiol, making the score 2-0 in the 25th minute. And in the second half, things did actually change, with Leeds making 2 half-time changes from Daniel Farke and changing shape to a 3-5-2 with wing-backs. Leeds were the better team, and able to withstand the City attacks from there on in. And instead it was the Whites that had the next chance to score, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin taking advantage of a mistake and scoring when 1-on-1 with Gigi Donnarumma, making the score 2-1 in the 49th minute and offering Leeds some hope. Leeds continued to do well and then won a penalty when Dominic Calvert-Lewin was brought down, with Lucas Mecha stepping up to take it. The initial penalty was saved. However, Mecha got up lucky and got to the ball straight away, as it felt nice for him to tap home from close range, making the score 2-2 in the 68th minute. Following the goal, Leeds and Man City both had spells of possession and territory to score. However, it was City who were the ones to get the winning goal when Phil Foden scored yet again from just inside the box, putting the ball into the corner of the goal, just past Lucas Perry's reach, making the score 3-2 in the 91st minute. And the game ended with Leeds taking no points home, which now means, 6 defeats in 7 or 5 defeats in 6? I've kind of lost count, but it's not doing great. Stats of note for the game in total, there was a lot of XG in this one, a lot of chances, lots of shots, 9 shots for Leeds, 18 for Man City, but 3.1 expected goals for City and 1.54 for Leeds. They're the main ones, and we'll split that down later when we talk about first and second half and how it all looked, because it is interesting and there's a question on that which we're going to come to. But yeah, Leeds definitely improved in that half. They had 38% of the ball overall in the game, and Man City had 62%. But I think that's it. Right then, what was the game plan in the first half then, Martin? And why did it not work?
So I think the main game plan was to try to get passes in to the right-hand channel for Dan James to get onto. That was the main plan when we did have the ball. We were just looking to get players from short passes around the back and then wait for an opening to get a lot longer ball forward. Although at times we did dally a little bit too much with the ball in the opening phases. And then the other strategy was to try to win balls from high turnovers and try to force chances that way. So those were the two main channels which we were looking to get to. If you look at any pass maps from this, you can look at these on the Opta Analyst website. You'll see a lot of passes, especially from Jayden Bogle. The fact three of his attempted passes literally ended in nearly the exact same spot. So it's clear that there was working on a particular strategy to get Dan James in behind on that right flank. So that was the main thing that we were looking to do, to try to create chances. And I think the main reason why it didn't work was just because it was a bit limited in the way it's looking to create, and there's only so many times that you can get that ball done before Man City twig on that that's what you're going for, and then it'll quickly get stamped out. See, a lot of the attempts which Bogle particularly was doing were unsuccessful because they were able to read the passes, and it was a pretty cute ball that they had to try to play to get that behind there, so it just sometimes just not successful. And then the high turnover aspect, he did have some little periods of joy, but overall Man City are a good team who do well when pressed, so it was never going to create too much. So yeah, in terms of the out of possession approach, I think that was largely undone when we conceded as early as what we did. Who could have guessed that playing a brand new left flank for the first time was going to cause some teething issues? Didn't expect it to cause teething issues in the very first attack of the game, mind you. But there you have it. Man City, a very, very good side. And yeah, that was a very, very nice constructive move. But we'll get into the details of the goals conceded later on in the pod. But yeah, the main plan was to get Dan James in behind and get balls into the box from there, I think.
Can't add loads, but I will say that I was pretty amazed at how aggressively we were pressing in certain areas in the first half. Like, this is Manchester City, coached by Pep Guardiola. Like, playing out of a press is their bread and butter, really. Obviously, some of their profiles might struggle with it a bit more than others, of course, but this is something they've been able to do for years, and it's probably why a lot of teams don't engage them as such, because it doesn't look great. And then in terms of in possession, as much as there was those definite channel balls that we were going for, the few times we hit it towards Mecha, that didn't work very well. I didn't think his strength was showing as much as it has in other games, and I mean, he's not as good at that particular aspect as Calvert-Lewin is. And then the other thing I would say is there was still a way too much for me shoehorning it around, and I think we should have been even more direct than we were. You're probably going to talk about the numbers on that at some point in this pod, but it wasn't still like levels above, our season average, which we've got now. And I was probably expecting more if we were to play the game plan in the correct way. And we don't have a split of what that looks like as well between the first and second half. I imagine the second half, it is a little bit more at least, because we had more profiles to go to. But yeah, I can't really say much else in terms of what the plan was. It clearly wasn't working, and it does kind of go out the window a little bit when you concede so early in the game. But obviously, Martin, there was improvement in the second half, and the total XG in the game has Man City at 3.1. However, that 1.34 of that was from open play, with the rest coming from set pieces. And then when you break that down further, as we say, the second half was much better. They only had 0.43 in the second half for City in total. And we ourselves, in the first half, we had 0.1, which is nothing. But we had 1.44 in the second. And I know a big chunk of that is the penalty, but it still was a big improvement. And we were having far more shots as well. So that's much better, first of all. But what did we do differently in the second to stifle them and have more control of the game and have it more on our own terms as well? Because the last thing I'll add before you answer is that ball possession wise, between the halves, we had 11% more in the second. And I don't think it was just us knocking it around the back. I think we were just getting into areas that were better for us and managed to get bodies around the ball and actually retain some spells of possession up the pitch. Anyway, I've spoken a lot there. So add whatever you need to add to what I just said. I don't even know if there was a question in there.
No, there definitely was a question, but it's all good. So the second half, obviously, we switched to the 3-5-2, which I think initially that gives you an extra body in deeper areas to help them to build out from. So you've got the three centre-backs, and then whichever one of the midfielders were dropping back as well. So that did help things, I think. I think that being able to go longer to a profile like Calvert-Lewin, along with Macher alongside him, just really did help us relieve tension, and it gave us a good outball to try to build some attacks there. And I think a combination of these two things were what enabled us to have a bit more of the ball. And yeah, it was night and day with the way we were defending. I think having that extra body there really did help, and I think we really kept a good handle on Erling Haaland throughout this game, which he was the one who terrified me the most, given how good he's been this season. But there was definitely a game plan to make sure that one of the centre-backs was always close by to Haaland no matter what. Pascal Struijk was the one who was doing it most, but I think in the second half it was split between him and Spiol, who were keeping the track on him, and either of them who were there, they did a good job of managing the physical battle with Haaland. There wasn't too many chances where he was able to run onto balls from longer positions, which has been his bread and butter this season, getting those big legs pumping and getting beyond players. He didn't have a chance to do that, really. I think we kept our line nicely and not leaving too much space behind, especially in the second half. That was night and day. Like we've already said, the XG says that we let them create so little in comparison to the first half. But I think a part of that was that we were actually able to hold on to the ball a bit more, which obviously if you have the ball, the opponent can't score or get shots. So that in itself helps as well. So I think the switch to the 3-5-2 really did help, and the personnel that we had out at the time also helped.
Yeah, I'm not going to add to that. I agree. So I'm going to ask you something from Bruce on Blue Sky, who said, is it reductive to think 3-5-2 caused the uptick in performance? You've kind of answered that, but he said it certainly seemed to help prevent the overloads. The two up top seem more connected as well. I agree. I actually think we should have been doing something like this for longer this season. I know we have a lot of wingers in the squad, but a couple of them at least can play as wing backs, and a couple of them could play centrally. So you've got the idea of like Dan James and Jack Harrison could probably do jobs as wing backs, so it gives you another option. They kind of go in with the fullback pile with Gudmundsson and Bogle. And then you've got like Gnonto and Okafor, who would do jobs as either kind of a second striker that runs off the big man, or even in Gnonto's case, like he could play as like a number 10. So like a lot of the wingers do actually fit into different roles in that shape. So it's not like it would be completely ridiculous for the squad to do that as a longer term plan as well. But yeah, it definitely did work, and I actually did quite like having two actual nines rather than one that could stretch in behind, which we did have a bit more when Okafor came on. Not that we did get that much out of him when he did, but I didn't mind the Mecha and Calvert-Lewin basically giving their defenders a bit of a rough go, and they certainly did, especially Calvert-Lewin. And it gave us a lot more control. We've said for a while on this pod as well, like probably back to the Arsenal game, like it doesn't mean it'll always work, first of all, but this kind of plan, if you plan it and you do it, and even if you lose, but you've kind of got more, comfortable with it and more familiar with it, then it might work in future games as well. And I just think we have a lot of the squad that can do it. So I don't really understand why we didn't for other games this season, even against weaker opposition. We also said around that time with the Arsenal game that if you can't match teams technically, then you've got to be better than them, or at least as good as them physically, and you've got to make the game more of a physical battle. And the second half, that's what we made it in those areas. So yeah, don't know if I've answered your question there, Bruce, or we already have answered it, but I do think it's something we should have been doing for a while longer, and I hope it's something that Farke will turn to. I can't remember which press conference it was recently, but he did sort of talk down the idea of back three and then did it in this game, so he doesn't make a lot of sense some of the time, does he? And then Michael in Discord said, does the success of the second half suggest we should always play this shape in a 3-5-2, or was it quite opposition specific? I'll let you answer that one, Martin.
I do think there definitely is more. There should be more opportunities to play this kind of shape. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 3-5-2. It could be a 3-4-3. It could be any iteration of that you'd like, as long as you've got a solid baseline there and you've got a midfield which can stop things up. It doesn't necessarily have to be three midfielders in there when you've got three centre backs, because you can get players to step out when they need to from the back line. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I do think that it shouldn't be against every opposition. There should be games where we do want to stick with what this side knows, which is a back four with 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, whichever way you want to look at it. But I think the more important aspect of the second half was the strategy in play behind it, which I think is going to be in the follow-up question, so I might as well actually just move straight into that one, to be honest, because it ties in. And the tactical aspect of it is more the going along to the big guy like Calvert-Lewin, getting bodies around him when either he wins the aerial battle or he loses the aerial battle, and then we can pick up the second balls from there. It's what we've been advocating for quite some time now. Going back at least but over a month now, we've been talking about this kind of play and why we should be leading towards it with the profiles that we've got in the squad. And I do think that for most opponents, this kind of strategy will work. There will be some where it won't, where if for example, that they've got a back three with lots of big bodies in there, then it might not make too much sense to do it that way. And you can maybe look for long balls to the channels instead. But we just need to mix things up more often and keep opponents guessing as to what it is that we're going to do, because people have been able to anticipate what it is that Daniel Farke was going to do. And hopefully this will lead him to adapt more and try this sort of style more often. And because it did work for large spells of the second half, and we were just unlucky that we were undone by a moment of magic from a fantastic player in Phil Foden at the end. So we could quite easily have got a point out of this. And as it stands there, we won the second half. We just didn't lose the first half by as many goals. So it's one of those things. But I do think that it would bring us more success if we were to lean into the strengths of the squad rather than not.
Yeah. So the follow-up for listeners was going to be, but Martin's answered it nicely, is the success of the team the shape more, or is it more how the team is in terms of the tactics of that particular shape itself, both on the ball and off the ball? And yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you said about keeping the opponent guessing. And I think there are probably times when we could play an 11 which could maybe flip between the two as well, and a back four and a back three. Maybe that would require Ampadu being one of the centre backs, or maybe it would even require playing like one of our centre backs at fullback, something like that. I'm spitballing here. I'm not saying we have to do it, or it might not need some time, but there are definitely options to do that at longer term there as well. But it would have been nice if we'd been able to do this against City for the full 90, because I think we would have had more joy. And yeah, obviously we might still lose the game, and there is a chance, obviously, that you mentioned it there with Phil Foden, like they have at least 4, 5, 6 players, if not a lot of subs as well, that can come on, that can make a difference really quickly, change a game just like that. And so you might still lose it, or you might still draw it, whatever. But I think it would give us more of a fighting chance, or it gives Pep kind of more thinking to do during the match. And obviously, Pep Guardiola is Pep Guardiola. He's one of the 2 or 3 best managers of all time. But it would have been nice for the full 90, as I say. The only negative I can find to the shape from the game, if I'm going to find a slightly negative angle, because I do think I agree with you, like in a lot of areas, it suits the profiles that we have. But the midfield 3, and this was mentioned in our group chat, when you have this shape, and you have at least, players like Gruev, Ampadu, Tanaka in particular, probably less so Stack and Longstaff, but yeah, Gruev, Ampadu and Tanaka, they like to come quite deep. And when you've already got a back 3 trying to build up, you do not need Ampadu right on top of them. You do not need Gruev right on top of them. They were the main 2 culprits, because obviously Tanaka was a little bit more advanced. And that could be a bit of a problem. So you have to account for that as well. You have to find a way around that if you are trying to build up the ball. But I say personally, don't try to build up the ball too much and just hit it. Just hoof it. Just get Tony Pulis out and launch it. So that's my fix for that particular issue that we saw a little bit on Saturday. I think we've kind of answered a lot of this, but already, Martin. But the final question on this section, I'll just quickly put it to you in case there's anything else we've missed. Was there a big difference in approach in the second half in terms of the approach itself? So this isn't necessarily the shape. This is the approach of how we played the game. Or was it more the players and profiles in their respective positions that we had out, like Calvert-Lewin, who made the approach more successful? I feel like we've answered it, but it's still there. So if you want to add anything else, go for it. If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, it very much was the same approach in the second half. You can see a lot of similar areas of long balls being played, but I do think that the balls themselves that were longer were different, like that they were more aerially focused in the second half than they were run-onto balls like we had for Nemacha and Dan James. So there was some change in the approach, but it was largely the same. It's just that the profiles we had in the advanced areas helped knit it all together more. And I think the Mage did a really good job of playing as a kind of half 9, half winger in his approach. He was often moving out towards the flanks, which he did some really nice plays in that sort of line, linked up well with Calvert-Lewin. So I do think that largely it was the same. But if you do look at the areas where we're trying to play the balls, again, there's a lot of Jaden Bogle looking for the longer balls behind, and we still were going for that in the second half. And again, if you look at the chalkboards on Opta Analyst, you can see all this, what I'm talking about myself. Just go on to Opta Analyst, find the individual game for this one, and you can see a chalkboard thing on there which helps to sort of link up where the passes were going to. But yeah, it definitely was a similar approach, just I think it's more the players and Calvert-Lewin in particular who helped to build from.
Yeah, that role that you mentioned for Mecha, I think that's a really good role for Okafor. I watched him for Salzburg play as he played a few different roles, but the games I watched, he was playing as a striker in a 2, and he can definitely do that in terms of just the running on and in behind from a flick on or whatever it might be. And I know there'll be some listeners shouting at me right now saying, Dan James can do that. I don't like Dan James as a 9. It's not for me. I prefer him elsewhere. So I'd prefer Okafor if we're going to do that. But yeah, you're right. The balls probably were more kind of floaty and less clipped. That's in my analytical terms coming out there. So yeah, there weren't as many clipped towards a winger in behind. It was more, let's get it towards the strikers. And if they're floaty and they're up in the air for a bit longer, you can push the team up as well. So that's probably why they were like that as well. So yeah, anyway, that's the end of this section. We're going to move on into some player analysis and some other bits and pieces in the second half of the pod.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
So we're going to answer some more of your guys' questions, but we're going to analyse the goals first. So what was the cause of the 3 goals conceded, starting with the first goal? Who are we putting the most blame upon, Martin?
So in that one, there was a mix-up between the left-sided players for me, between Justin and Nonto.
Wow. Wow. Really surprising. Have they
Who
ever
could
played
have thunk
together?
it? I don't think they have, no. So yeah, because you had, first of all, you had non-toes tracking Nunes, and then when the ball was played inside, at that point, Justin should have taken over the tracking of Nunes into the box, because you always want your full-back, the one defending inside the box, and not your winger. But they both kind of went for it, which meant neither of them really got to the man in time, and so it just made it quite easy for Nunes to get in and get the ball into the box, even if Foden hadn't have got onto it. Haaland was just behind him, literally lining up his strike at the same moment that Foden was. So yeah, I think it's more on the personnel there who didn't quite know what to do with the situation so soon into the match. And yeah, I think that's just, they'll get better with that with time of playing a lot alongside each other. I don't really begrudge either of them too much, because it was a really nicely constructed play, good passes involved in it, but ultimately it was because we didn't quite get the marking right when the ball was played into the box. And yeah, I'm not sure what else to put onto it other than that. No blame on Perry for me. It was a nicely finished goal. I think that those were the main two for me.
Foden's he's hit that gear again that he hit 2 seasons ago, where he won Premier League Player of the Year. And there was a reason that we were shoehorning him into England teams when he wasn't really a good fit for pretty much any of the roles, really. He probably should have been used as more of a sub. I love Foden as a player, so it hurts me that he's kind of hit this groove again. But yeah, the finish was just exceptional, and it's not the first time he's done it this season, let's put it that way. But yeah, agree with you. Second goal then, probably finding more blame for the keeper here, aren't we?
Yeah, I do think that. I think Perry should have done better with the shot, and he should have parried it somewhere less dangerous. And I think that's probably all I'd say.
Fewer dangerous. Fewer dangerous.
Yes, fewer dangerous areas, yeah. So, yeah, I don't see too much else to blame over than maybe the linesman for not spotting the incredibly obvious offside before the corner was taken, the previous corner. But yeah, regards to the players on the pitch, maybe we could have been a bit faster to mark Guardiola, but I do think that largely it was on Perry to deal better with that initial shot for me.
Yeah, I really can't add anything. He should have just done better with it. It should have been stronger. He's not been the best at commanding his box in those situations so far for someone who's, 6'5", 6'6", and that's frustrating. And another one of my favourite Man City players, and there are quite a few of their players that I really, really do love. Another one of my favourites scored against us in Guardiola, so thanks, mate. Third goal then. It was just so deflating, man. I just remember it again. I've obviously had to watch it a few times now. It's just but again, it's just real quality from Foden, isn't it? It's hard to be too blaming on the keeper or a defender that should have closed him down quicker. So where are you playing? Where are you putting the blame? Is it sort of in the build up to the shot?
I don't know. I find it hard to attribute blame to this one at all, really, for any individual. Yeah, we could have been a little bit sharper at closing him down. We could have closed down Foden more when he initially got the ball. I think Calvert-Lewin was quite close to him there and didn't really react quick enough when the ball was played to him. But I largely don't really want to attribute blame on that to anyone. It was just a magic moment from a magic player in that. And yeah, put just beyond Perry's reach. Ball came through a lot of bodies, so I'm not really putting it on Perry either. Yeah, he had to react quite quickly to that, and it was placed right in the bottom corner. So yeah, I wouldn't want to attribute anything really anyone. That's just one of those things that happen when you're playing one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe in the sort of build up to the goal, there are little moments where a player could maybe put a foot in or something, or block a passing angle, but when it actually makes its way to Foden, there's very little you can do. Sometimes it is just fair enough to be just and we've had a guy that's mentioned this to us from other pods this season, where the opposition just have better players, and in most games this season, bar 3 or 4, that's true. There's not many squads we're competing with, and there are always players. I remember Forest's attack that they've built. They're in the bottom 5 this season. Look at the forwards they've got now. It's ridiculous the riches that some of these teams have, and then Man City are Man City. But if you'll allow me to have a bit of Adam time for some Adam analysis here. I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into, because this was yet another late goal, this final goal. And I want to first, well, I'll ask you this in a second, basically what we're putting these concessions down to, but just to put this into perspective for our listeners, in first half of games this season, Leeds are losing 10-9 on aggregate, which is not bad. It's by one goal we've lost the first half this season in all our games combined. In fact, in the final 15 minutes of halves, we're 5-2 up. We're doing pretty well in that area. But in the second half of games, we are not ending games well at all. It's an aggregate of, I worked out a second ago and I've forgotten now, 15-4 to the opposition, which is obviously a huge discrepancy, including losing 6-1 in the final minute. We've only scored one goal in the final minutes of games, and that was Metro in the first game of the season. Since that game when we beat Everton in the final 15 minutes, we have conceded 6 goals. For perspective, there's a few teams that have conceded more than that. Burnley have conceded considerably more. But they've also scored 5, so their gap's the same as ours. Forest are probably the interesting one here, where they've lost 9-2 in the final 15 minutes of matches, so they're not ending games well at all. They've lost by 7 goals in that period. Wolves are the really interesting one. I mean, this isn't a surprise, they're the worst team in the league so far in terms of points. They've conceded in the final half an hour of games 13 goals and scored 1, so they're ending games horrifically, which may be partly game sake because they're often losing, so they probably have to go for it, and that probably explains that, but still. Leeds are certainly one of the poorest teams when it comes to this. And in terms of the gap, in terms of the amount of goals conceded in the final 15 or scored in the final 15, we have a gap of 5, Burnley have 5, and the only team with more, like I say, is Forest with 7. So we're just really not ending games well. And you put this into perspective from last season, Martin, where we often won games late, 1-0 or 2-1. Or we'd add gloss to the scoreline. There was a lot of games last season where we were 1-0 up for ages, and then in the final 15 minutes, we would put another goal away and it'd be 2-0, and suddenly the scoreline would probably be a bit more reflective of our dominance. And that was a lovely time, I have to say. I really enjoyed that. But this is not the same with Leeds this season. So what are we putting it down to? Because is it a concentration late in games kind of thing? Because it's a more intense league and players are having to be full at it for 90 minutes, and maybe in the Championship as well, because we were able to dominate the ball, there was maybe less concentration into doing those kind of defending aspects, those kind of mental aspects. You're more thinking about where you're passing the ball and keeping the ball away from the opposition to retain possession. So what are you putting it down to if you have an answer?
I don't really have anything in particular other than our team is just not as good as the teams that we're facing most of the time, and they'll have better attackers and we have better defenders, and it's just not a very good matchup. And yeah, there could be something to do with concentration late in games, and the best teams have players who can concentrate more for the full 90 minutes. But there is most of the teams who are in the bottom 5 who are doing worst on this kind of thing. So like you mentioned, Forest and Burnley and us. And I think we're West Ham on this. How West Ham doing? West Ham, actually, this is their only positive spell in the full 90 minutes. So that is just weird. Literally, every other 15 minute spell, it's in the red. And for the final 15 minutes, it's 7 goals to 5 conceded, so that's just weird. But yeah, largely I think it is down to the talent differential, and it's just one of those things which happened late in games. In the Championship, we had the talent differential, so we were able to score goals late on because we have high levels of fitness, high levels of pace and acceleration and stamina, so it just meant that we were able to score more goals later on in games, whereas now we don't have that talent differential, and it's us who are being dunked on late on in games because we maybe either haven't got the stamina or the concentration levels to keep it up for the full 90. And yeah, it definitely does need to be improved, but I'm not really sure how we would go about that in particular.
Yeah, I just found it interesting, especially because Farker made a big song and dance this week about our physical numbers. Obviously, we don't have access to this kind of data, but the running numbers and the data behind that, he said we're right up there in terms of our intensity for 90 minutes with Man City. But these kind of, goals conceded late on numbers don't necessarily tell that story. We're obviously a much better first half team and a much worse second half team. It might be not a physical fatigue thing then, and it might literally just be a mental fatigue. I can think of goals like the Bournemouth one where couple of players switch off, don't quite get their contacts right, and then suddenly it's 2-2 in the final few minutes and stuff like that. So it might just be a bit of that. Might just be a bit of it's not as easy as it was last season. Let's put it that way. Don't know if you've answered this really, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What did you make of Farke's comments post-match? Pre-match in his presser regarding the left-hand side, and then not changing the system at all, but just the personnel. That was his solution, and it didn't even last a minute.
Yeah. It didn't go well for him to, if that was his answer to changing the left-hand problems, was just to change the personnel and not really do a whole lot different other than maybe those players themselves being less attack-minded. I'd probably say that Justin is less attack-minded than what Goodmanson is, but I wouldn't say that it really worked. But at the same time, it's Man City. That I don't think there's too much you can really stick on Farke for that, but I did find it funny that was his answer, just tear up the whole left channel and decide to do it. But it could have just been rotation related. I think Goodmanson and Okafor have been our best players in recent months and weeks, so I think maybe he could have been keeping them fresher for the midweek game against Chelsea, which I think is probably more, obviously still not an easy game, but because it's at home, it's automatically a little bit more winnable than what Man City away is, of course. So I do think that this could be a combination of two things here, but it's still funny that was the answer considering his comments in the presser. But yeah, it's just Man City being good, really, and I don't think anything we would have done to try to address that would have really solved it with the players we've got at our disposal.
I think one of the things I haven't done a lot of analysis, and I want to at some point, like look at some of these goals back from this channel and see what it is tactically. And I'm sure some of our listeners are probably hoping that we have done this already, but we haven't. Look at these kind of goals and see what the similarities are between them. I haven't, and I can't, recall every goal we've conceded off the top of my head because I mean, I'm not a sadist and I don't like to remember the Leeds goals that we've conceded.
Yes, you are a sadist.
But one thing I will say, obviously the start of the season, we've basically had a lot of different changes on this left side. There's been a few more consistent players, but there's still not been anyone that's stuck it out there. Anton Stach's played the most minutes as the left centre mid so far, but he's missed 2 games. Obviously the one this weekend with the concussion, and then he was dropped for 1 game, wasn't he? So that's 2 games he's missed, but he's been pretty consistent. Obviously Strauch's played a lot as the left centre back, but Biel's played 3 games there in the league. Goodmanson's the main one. Obviously he's only missed 1 game where he's not started. So there's that. And then Okafor has been playing more recently, but he didn't play this one. It was Gnonto who started the season on the left as well. So there's just not been as much consistency there. So I don't think that helps. Whereas you look at Rodon, you look at Bogle, and for a while it was Longstaff, obviously until recently. That was a settled 3 more so than anything else. And then Aronson obviously in front of them. So that 4 was a lot more settled than the left has been. So that could be part of it in terms of a coaching aspect and in terms of just getting to know each other aspect in training and in matches, because they'll obviously practice together in training and whatnot. So it's something. It's not a strong answer from me, but it's something. I think it's something to maybe dig more into if we do concede.
Well, there's also one thing that I want to say, that just because the assist came from the left side, opposition right side, doesn't mean that the problem is on the left side, because I can think off the top of my head 2 or 3 of the goals were caused by midfielders not picking up their markers. So it could be actually a midfield problem which is causing it, and not the left-hand side at all, because Ampadu himself has been at fault for 2 of them. And then I think Anton Stach was another one who didn't pick up his marker in the goals I'm thinking of. I think 2 of them were against Brighton and one was Forest, I want to say.
Any way at all that you find it that you can defend Pascal Strauch, I see you, Martin.
There is part of that, but no, it's as it is of other things, in my opinion, that it's not always going to be the left-sided players who are at fault for this, because it takes into account where the ball's being passed to, and if it was addressed in the right manner then at the same time. But yeah, but we're going to concede goals down flanks at some point because we're a bottom half side. So, but we'll see how things go on that going forward.
Definitely something to keep an eye on, just to see if Rodon keeps getting away with it. He can't keep getting away. I'm joking. He's still a great player, but he does get away with a few more things, I think, down his side sometimes. Question from our lovely editor, Paul, who said some positives to take from this, but overall, was that the worst possible result? Obviously, seeing quite a few people saying this online, including myself, and in the Discord. Our lovely friend Sicross genuinely celebrated when Man City scored the winner. But I agree with Paul. It's definitely, for me, the worst way it could have happened, because I understand why people are saying if the inevitable is to happen that Farke is sacked, in a lot of people's brains it's inevitable, so that's why I use that word. Then getting it over, the quicker the better in some people's minds. And so you could argue, if you're going to lose to City, you might as well lose 5-6-7-0, and maybe the club will act. But to come back to 2-2 from 2-0 down, only to concede in the 91st minute in a gallant display is, yeah. I have to say, I can't believe, like, I'm going to say this on a podcast, but I mean, it's genuinely how I feel. I would rather have lost that 5-0 than the way we did, just to have it kind of done. Not even necessarily for Farke's sake, but just like, it felt horrible to do that. 5-0 was a bit more expecting. I know it means our goal difference has actually, benefited, and West Ham actually lost by 2 goals today, didn't they? So they're now actually only ahead of us on goals scored. So you can look at it that way and say, well, it's not all that bad when you get out of Man City with just a 1-goal defeat after we've been there and lost by 7 in recent seasons. But yeah, I mean, the main point is here, winning and drawing is the most important thing for Leeds United, no matter who's in charge, no matter what. But if you're going to lose to Man City, and you're trying, a lot of fans hoping that the manager is potentially sacked at some point soon, and yeah, maybe it wasn't the best way to go about it, I have to say. So I do agree with Paul. I can see why some fans won't agree, and I can see why some people listening will not like what I've just said there, but it was really, really gutting. I was almost laughing, to be honest, a few minutes after it happened. That's how much it hurt, to be honest. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that one, Martin?
So, I think that if you do judge it as the worst possible result, it's more because you want Daniel Farke gone than you want Leeds to lose. Just first of all, that is more what it is, that you've lost faith in Farke as the head coach. However, if you look at it as like, say for example, there's no managerial changes allowed and we were stuck with Daniel Farke for the rest of the season, then it obviously wouldn't have been the worst possible result, because we want to keep our goal difference down. But when you're down at the bottom end of the table, goal difference definitely does play a big part, and you can definitely sometimes be saved just because of that. But I do think that if we were wanting to get rid of Farke soon, and a lot of people do at this point, then yeah, losing by as many goals as possible is the way forward, and this result didn't really do anything for us. If we'd got a point, even a point would have been a good result there, because it would have immediately shifted us out of the relegation zone, and even though it's 1 point above the relegation zone, it is still a good thing for morale purposes. But I was leaning more towards your end of it, that I would have preferred to lose by a few more goals if it would have hastened Farke being pulled out of the job, because I'm also of the opinion that we should be making a change as soon as we can now. So we've give the new manager more time to work with the squad. Even if we are losing games against Chelsea and Liverpool that we've got coming up, it's still better to have the manager in place sooner rather than later. And yeah, that's all I've got to say on that one.
Yeah, I totally agree about the confidence in the squad thing. It will have done them some good, and that is probably a good thing, obviously. I think even though losing the way it went will have been hard to take, they'll have definitely taken something from getting back like that. It was a scrappy goal from Calvert-Lewin. It's a bit lucky the way it came about. Nice pass from Tanaka. Kind of unfortunate you won't get an assist for it because of the way it kind of got back in possession. Anyway, I digress. And I'm, winning the penalty, but we were, trying to get the ball forward and get into areas to create and to take the game to them. So yeah, I think the players will take something from that. I think what it does for me and for maybe a lot of the players as well is if some of them are thinking about, I'm not enjoying playing under this guy at the moment. It's not really working, is it? From a fan perspective and from their perspective, they might be thinking it gives us some hope that a next manager can play the games this way or more closely to this. It doesn't have to necessarily be a 3-5-2. Don't want to get lost in the 3-5-2 talk because it's not just about that, is it? It's about getting the ball into the areas that it needs to be in and having the right profiles in place. And that can be with a back four. It doesn't have to be with a back three. It can be with a back three. I think we can do both. But it just gives some hope for another coach, maybe, that this squad has something about it. This squad has something in terms of the profiles that can be adapted, can be altered, and that would be really good for us if we can play a few different ways. But also, the last point to make here is it gives a bit of hope for this week. We've just lost our hardest game in the last minute, 3-2. Chelsea were at home. I'm not on the preview, so I can say this quickly. They haven't got Reece James. They haven't got Moises Caicedo. Or at the very least, Reece James won't be starting because Maresca's already said that. And Caicedo's out. He's suspended. So that's already it's a much worse Chelsea team. I think they're two of their three best players. And then we play a Liverpool team who, I know they just beat West Ham today, but they're completely undercooked right now. They're completely a bit of a mess of themselves, a bit of a shadow of themselves. And even though there were some good signs today, even from Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak, their 220 odd million pound signings, we can definitely take the game to them and get at them. So yeah, whoever's in charge, I think there's a bit of hope there for those two games. I think they're easier than the one we just played, which we just lost in the last minute 3-2. Right, we had a question, well, not a question so much, it was just an interesting statement from Halifax Exile on Blue Sky, who said, "Who would have thought just marking Haaland could be so effective? Well done, Pascal." I've included this because a bit of Pascal love is always good to see. He also added, "Still, you would have to wonder why Erling Haaland didn't make use of his elite movement." I agree, but I think he's found it in a lot against Leeds. I don't think he cares as much. He's probably thinking I hope we win, but I don't want to have to be the one that's I'm joking. Obviously, he's an elite footballer and he won't think like that, but he certainly hasn't played as well against us as he has other teams. He's not scored as many. I think he's got 2 maybe against us. Something like that. Yeah, so good on Pascal. I think this is a nice moment to talk about him in a back three as a left centre-back. I think that could work really nicely. BL's also got more experience of a central centre-back role. Rodon's played either right-sided centre-back or central centre-back for Wales in a back three before. So they've all got some experience of doing it. Profile-wise, they probably all suit that. So I mean, you can praise the three if you want for their second half performance if you want to do that. So here, Martin, or we can just give Pascal some love because we love him so much. And this was much better from him than some of his recent displays where he's fine against Villa, but some of the ones just before he got dropped weren't quite as strong. That's fair to say. But he was really good here, I thought. Genuinely had the beating of someone who's actually taller than him and more physical than him on a number of occasions. So I imagine when he went home that evening, even though deflated from the defeat, probably feeling quite good. And he took out his pockets and he put his wallet down on the counter, his keys, and then also Erling Haaland as well because he was in his back pocket all game. Anyway, anything you want to talk about here with Pascal?
Yeah, just want to echo all of what you said already, that he had a really positive game in this one. He didn't make any individual errors at all. From what I saw, his passing was decent and was under some pretty strong pressure at times, but it's more the way he handled probably the best striker in the world right now. I think it's a fair statement.
My English bias wants to say Harry Kane, but yeah, it probably is Haaland.
Yeah, it's close. It's very close. But yeah, you have to say that Pascal will be happy with the way he's done in this game. And it wasn't just him. BL was also doing a lot of marking in the second half when he came on, but Strike was on the pitch the whole game.
Yeah, shout out BL, man. He played well here as well. It was just really positive from that back three. I think Rodon was the weakest of the three, but it was a pretty high bar set in that second half. So, and I think Strout, like you say, he was good in the first. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the worst move of individuals I want to shout out as well while we're on this, just Jaden Bogle. I thought he was fantastic. He was up against probably the best one-on-one dribbler in the league, and he was not tore apart. He stood him up. He lost one dribble duel in this one. That's it. That's all he lost because of the way he was standing up to Doku, and Doku wasn't wanting to take him on most of the time. He was more trying to get crosses into the box than taking him on. Yeah, so you've got to give credit to Bogle. His aura made Doku back off a bit, and yeah, shout out to big Jaden Bogle. But Jamie Shack's better, right? We shall know that. Yeah. Sorry, Sheffield United fans, if you're listening, you're not, but yeah, okay. And the other, obviously, big standout player was Dominic Calvert-Lewin. That second half performance was, my God, he just caused problems for Man City with whatever he did. That one where he received the ball, the touch took it forward, and he just ran onto it. That was just glorious. The pace, and he's eating up ground in that moment, and little things. The goal itself was well taken as well, and then winning the penalty as well. Although I do not know what Gvardiol was doing in that moment. What was he trying to do?
The funny thing is, like, there has been a bit of talk about this as well. Like, he probably could have seen red for that because obviously there's a double jeopardy rule, but I don't think he plays for the ball. So I think he could have given a red for that, but he didn't. He bottled it.
No, 100%. But yeah, you got to give credit to him. Mature as well was fantastic in this as well. Although he wasn't as effective as Calvert-Lewin at dealing with the aerial balls, he was still very good at all the rest of the things that he was asked to do in this game. And although the penalty was saved, he still managed to convert the rebound, which is the most important part of it.
Yeah, so Tanaka needs a shout out, I think, because he shows it wasn't just the pass through to Calvert-Lewin for that goal, but he just shows our other midfielders how to pass the football sometimes. And I'm not saying like I didn't like our midfield recruitment in the summer, because I do think from the perspective of trying to survive relegation, I can completely understand the profiles we went for. But our second best passing midfielder is probably Anton Stack, and I don't think he's even close to Tanaka in that sense. And like Longstaff's really allergic to passing in open play. Ampadu's okay. Gruev. So yeah, shout out to Tanaka. Like even against Man City, just a few moments where just shows, yeah, I know how to get my foot on the ball and like make a nice pass out to the channel through to one of the number 9s. Yeah, good lad. Who else I had in mind? Yeah, the Calvert-Lewin thing is interesting because I've been a big Ruben Dias is really overrated guy for about 5 years now. And I'm not saying he's poor. He's clearly not. He's played a lot of games for Man City over the last few years and is a good player. But I just don't understand how he's considered in conversations around like top 5, top 10 centre-backs in the league. I think there's so many players who I much prefer. Like I look at Malik Chow from Newcastle at the moment, how he's playing, like just showing him levels. And he was just roughed about a lot here. Obviously Guardiola as well for the penalty, but I'm much more of a fan of his because of what he's kind of capable of in an attacking sense as well, in terms of what he can do in possession. I think he's a really, really lovely footballer. Anyway, this is a Leeds pod. And then Jaden Bogle, right. I think we need to start a campaign about him getting the England squad. I'm being deadly serious. I'm not being fully serious. I think he is showing, and I know we had a bit of a dip recently, definitely did. Maybe it was just a lot of games, and he is playing almost all the time, almost every minute. We never really rotate him out or bring him off because obviously Justin can play both sides, but he doesn't always come in. And maybe that's something we should do to kind of preserve our fullbacks a bit more, is probably play Justin a bit more. But he was easily our best player here, in my opinion, other than Calvert-Lewin in that second half. And how well Stroud did as well. But I would give Bogle's getting my man of the match if that wasn't clear. Ethan was on Twitter talking about this and how good he is. And like you almost take it for granted just how good he is. Unfortunately for him, England have a lot of good right backs. Probably the strongest position in the entire England squad, so he's probably not going to make it in. Jed Spence is like fourth choice, Tino Livramento, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Reece James, who just had an absolutely unbelievable game for Chelsea, down to 10 men. So, yeah, he's not going to get in, but I just absolutely love him, and he will be playing Premier League football next season. That is for sure. There's no chance he's going to be with us if we get relegated. So big shout out to him. He was definitely my man of the match. Who are you giving it to? Are you going to give it to Calvert-Lewin for his second half performance, or are you going to give it to one of the players that played the full 90 or close to the full 90?
I see there's a few who could get it for me. I was leaning more towards Bogle, but Tanaka is also really close to it as well. There's a few who did a really good shift here, but I'm probably going to lean towards my initial thing was Bogle. Although Calvert-Lewin was very close, but he only played half of football. And I think Bogle had a lot more challenges to come up against. Like, he's marking the best 1v1 dribbler in the league, probably, or one of the best. And he did a good job at it. And then in possession, he was good. So you can't ask for more than that against Man City.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to look at Calvert-Lewin's numbers. I mean, it's called man of the match, isn't it? It's not called man of the half match, so I don't think he can get that. Bogle can get man of the match. But yeah, I was just looking at the numbers in terms of Calvert-Lewin, duels-wise. He won 4 out of 5 of his ground duels, which is obviously great. But he won 2 out of 9 aerials, which is obviously losing 7. Which obviously doesn't scream and stand out, but this is the point, isn't it? Like, this is what we've been saying for ages. It's not necessarily about winning them. It's sometimes often about just making it difficult for your opposition. And even if Diaz or Guardiola were winning the aerial over him, the ball was still coming our way more in that second half because the possession numbers show we had 44% of the ball in that second half compared to 33% in the first half. It was a massive improvement, and Calvert-Lewin was a huge part of that. So, yeah, really pleased with him. The only thing I wanted to say, the last point I wanted to make was I wish he'd brought Okafor on a bit earlier to stretch in behind. I think Farke did all right here, and I think he hopefully will learn some lessons from this. I'm not sure that he will. I'm going to be honest. I don't think he will, but I hope he does. But one of the only other thing I would say from that second half is if he brought Okafor on a bit earlier, him being fresh legs, stretching in behind their defence when they needed to go for a goal at 2-2 themselves, we might have nicked it. And I thought it was just a bit too late, and it just didn't give him quite enough time. And I can't even recall that many opportunities that he got where the ball was like anywhere near his channel that he was trying to run to. So that was a bit of a shame. But that's it, I think. Is there anything else you wanted to finish on, or can I close?
You can close. I'm all good.
Right. Patreon is somewhere you should be subscribing because we do bonus content, and I promised an article at some point this week. I'm going to think of something and I'm going to do something. I'll send that to you, Martin, and you can publish it for me. But yeah, if you want to access that kind of stuff, patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. Don't forget, again, to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff on not just YouTube, any of your podcast players. Give a review. It massively helps. Spotify, I don't think our reviews are as good as they should be. And so if you can, give us a 5-star, maybe drop a nice comment, even reply on the comments. We might see you in there. I often reply on YouTube. It would be nice to see you in some of the comments if you're there. And yeah, that's everything today, I think. Nothing else to say. So we'll be back very soon to talk about Chelsea, who we play on Wednesday, I believe. And Martin will be talking to Will for that preview pod, which is going to be recorded tomorrow. And then we'll be back on Thursday to talk about that and to preview a game against Liverpool. It's a fun week. It really is a fun week. So, yeah, we'll see you all for that. But thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you as well, Adam.
And thank you, listeners. We appreciate all of you very much. And we hope you enjoy the start of your week and the rest of your week. Goodbye.